three tunnels. I will show you the fourth one. And this is what I found out, that as we look at the Sphinx today.
How deep do you think Egypt's oldest secrets really go? For a very long time, the Great Sphinx has stood still and watched the desert, keeping an eye on something hidden under its paws. What if the stories were true, though? The best archaeologist in Egypt, Zahi Hawass, is finally speaking out, and you're about to learn why. Are you ready? Let's jump right in. The man who kept Egypt's secrets. He was born in Damietta, a small town on the Nile Delta. It was a long way from the golden sands that would make him famous one day. When he was a kid, Zahi Hawass didn't dream of being famous or being on TV. As a child, he was just interested in and loved stories, especially ones that were hidden in sand. Something in the old statues, paintings, and stories about pharaohs calling out from other times spoke to him. Those words would change his life, but he didn't know it yet. Hawass looked backward, 4,000 years backward, in a country where most people looked to the future. He worked his way through Egypt's colleges and studied archaeology.
Zahi Hawas with us. He's an Egyptologist. He's studying and making discoveries all around the country of Egypt.
He also wouldn't be ignored. By the time he was 30, he was following the same trails that travelers he had read about. He had become something very special by the time he was 40. He was the chief antiquities officer of Egypt and held the keys to the past. Nothing could be touched in history without his mark. That included tombs, temples, and stones, the sharp-brimmed straw hat, the rolled-up sleeves, and the deep voice that echoed across the sands were all things by which people knew him. The cameras loved him, and he loved fighting. Egypt's treasures, like the Rosetta Stone in London and the bust of Nefertiti in Berlin, were claimed by museums in other countries.
Queen Nefertiti, the 3,400-year-old Egyptian beauty, is back where museum authorities say she belongs.
Hussein fought back like a lion guarding its cubs. Some saw him as a hero who took back Egypt's story for the Egyptians. Others saw him as a cruel tyrant of the ditches who kept the past too secret out of political and personal pride. And in the middle of his lookout stood the Great Sphinx of Giza, a spirit that was stranger than any other. It wasn't just another building to Hawass. The face of Egypt was cut into stone, and it was his holy duty to do it. Its repairs were under his watch, and he looked at every crack and crease and made a map of its weathered body inch by inch. No outside team could dig near it while he was in charge. What was below could not be touched. He told them he was keeping it safe. He swore to protect everything, but deep down he was afraid that the Sphinx might still have secrets that could change everything he had sworn to protect. For many years, Hawass stood in front of cameras and said that those paws did not cover any hidden rooms, caves, or libraries. His voice was final, and he had complete power. But behind closed doors, fresh scans and data started to hint that this wasn't the case. Shapes were found where stones should have been, and the designs were too perfect to be natural. Everybody needs to learn how to listen when the sands of time start to talk. How one sculpture resisted time, logic, and everything Egypt thought it knew about its own history. The monument that shouldn't have been there. The monument that shouldn't exist. It has seen storms, floods, armies, and tourists come and go in the desert around it for more than 4,000 years. The Great Sphinx of Giza is 240 feet long from tail to paw and rises 66 feet into the air. It was cut from a single ridge of limestone. Even though its face is old and its nose is long gone, it still looks east toward the sunrise, as if it were keeping something that only it would remember. There is an easy story in textbooks. Around 2500 BC, Pharaoh Khafra, who built the second pyramid, told the Sphinx to watch over his tomb complex. That looks good on paper, one king, one memorial. The puzzle is over. But it makes less sense the more you look into it. There is no old record that says Khafra built it. Not a single writing paper or carving credits him as the author. Even the workers who covered walls with hieroglyphs that bragged about building pyramids forgot to make a lion-shaped guardian to stand next to them. The Sphinx just shows up, huge, quiet, and mysterious. Scholars for generations were bothered by that omission. Why didn't anyone brag about Khafra's work if it was the world's most impressive statue? Why didn't priests write down that it was dedicated? There was no architect, blueprint, or background for the skyscraper. It was just made of stone. The second puzzle was written in weather instead of words. The Sphinx's body is scarred with deep vertical lines that look like they were made by years of heavy rain running down rock. But it hasn't rained that much in Giza in more than 5,000 years. Sand and wind cut across, but only water cuts down. With that one clue, an argument began that won't go away. Geologists started to argue about things that couldn't be true. Egypt may not have been dry when the Sphinx was made after all. It may have been there before the desert, when the Sahara was green and rivers ran through the plains. So, the Sphinx might be a lot older than the temples next to it, by a lot of years. A small but annoying artifact called the Inventory Stela, which was found near the Sphinx temple, backs up that crazy idea. Inscriptions on it say that there was a temple of Isis beside the Sphinx before Khafra's father, Pharaoh Khufu. That is, Egyptians during Khufu's reign already thought the Sphinx was very old. Scholars disagree about how true the text is, but the inconsistency will not go away. Even Thutmose IV's dream, Stela, which takes place 1,000 years later, talks about the Sphinx as an old artifact and not as something new. And there were more and more lies. Arabic historians wrote about secret doors that were locked by magic. Greek visitors said the Sphinx pointed to the start of tunnels that led to the underworld. Every culture that came into contact with it added to the wonder, as if the monument itself wanted to be kept secret. By the early 19th century, these stories began to mix with modern mania. The Sphinx was linked to a lost society that was older than Egypt by mystics and explorers. An American psychic named Edgar Cayce told believers that the Hall of Records, a vault holding the wisdom of a long-gone golden age, was located under the Sphinx's right paw. He said that, when the time of awakening comes, it would be found. Scientists thought it was a dream for many years, because the Sphinx, the structure that shouldn't exist, was burying something deep in the ground. Once facts became stories, when unseen waves mapped the unimaginable, Egypt's biggest secret began to take shape in the dark. The discovery that changed everything. At first, there was no excitement or news in the headlines. In 1991, there was only a group of scientists standing in the hot Egyptian sun and pointing strange equipment at the Great Sphinx. They were not looking for riches or believing in conspiracies. They were engineers from Japan's Waseda University, led by Dr. Sakuji Yoshimura, and they were trying to figure out a practical question. Was the structure stable, or was it falling apart from the inside? At that time, electromagnetic soundings were a new type of technology. To do this, waves were sent deep into the limestone, and the sounds that came back were red. The machines buzzed and data flowed, and all of a sudden, something that shouldn't have been there showed up on the screen. In the ground under the northern paw of the Sphinx, the signals showed the edges of rectangular holes that were neatly carved into the rock. Along its left side, another design showed up that was too accurate to be natural. At first, no one was brave enough to call them rooms. The team just called them anomalies. They were small areas of empty space that could be old tunnels or something else. But everyone in that field knew that limestone doesn't naturally form squares. Those holes were made by something or someone. The findings were printed in Japanese journals, but they were buried under a lot of academic language that not many people outside of Japan ever read. In the West, not many people paid attention, but in Cairo, the man who kept Egypt's secrets safe, did. Egypt's chief of antiquities, Zahi Hawass, saw the news and stopped moving. Those readings, if true, could call into question everything he had protected for decades. He told the press that there was no evidence of hidden chambers. Informally, he was more interested than ever. The next year, he quietly got in touch with American experts who had access to even more advanced sensors. By 1997, a mixed team had set up equipment around the Sphinx in a very secure area and used newer electromagnetic systems to scan the same area. The signs were even stronger this time. The sensors showed that there were airy places about 25 feet below the surface that were linked by small passages. Shapes were very clear, with straight walls and smooth corners, patterns that couldn't have been caused by erosion alone. Those rooms were built by something. The team got ready to look into it more, but everything stopped before they could put a shovel in the ground. The written record of what happened next never came out. Some said the political pressure came from higher-ups, who were worried about how getting involved with foreign countries would look. Some people said in whispers that what had been found or was almost found was too dangerous to talk about. The Sphinx puzzle was buried again, but this time under red tape instead of sand. It turned into a storm for Hawass. It was hard for him to choose between being a scientist who wanted to know the truth and a politician who had sworn to protect Egypt's image. People came to the country to see the pharaohs, temples, and golden tombs, which were all part of its story. It was risky to change that story. The rumors were heard around the world. The secret beneath the Sphinx was the subject of shows on CNN and Discovery. Experts disagreed. Some people laughed at the claims, others cheered, and Egypt once again kept its secrets to itself. But technology kept getting better. The Supreme Council of Antiquities conducted new internal studies in secret from 2009 to 2018, this time using ground-penetrating radar and seismic reflection profiling. These studies weren't guesses. They were accurate, backed by the government, and kept very secret. Once more, the tools found something that nature couldn't explain. There were two big problems that stood out. The first was a rectangular hole that was about 9 by 12 meters and was about 8 meters below the ground, right under the Sphinx's northern paw. The second was a straight line of empty space that ran along the body's axis, like a tube linking the head to the tail. Even more shocking, later AI-assisted tomography scans in 2023 showed these spaces in amazing 3D detail. They were like chambers with smooth edges, even densities, and hints of structures inside. The data didn't look like it had odd cracks or empty spaces in it. It looked like a room. Then the surprise that made archaeologists stop and think. Granite dust was found in borer samples that were taken for repair work. But the bedrock of Giza is limestone. Granite doesn't naturally appear there. Long ago, someone brought rock from somewhere else and worked on it deep below the Sphinx. No matter what those chambers were, they were built with a goal in mind. The confession: Zahi Hawass was Egypt's strongest and most stable voice for more than 50 years. He fought on TV in crowded halls and in front of skeptics. He ignored all rumors of lost civilizations or secret tunnels under the Sphinx. He was strong because he was sure of himself. His confidence came from being in charge. Egyptology paid attention to Hawass because he wasn't just talking about history, he was also defending it. But over time, even stone can break. The first cracks showed up not in the Sphinx, but in the man who had made a living protecting it. He had ignored radar problems for decades, thinking they were just useless blips or random noise in the desert. However, as time went on, the blips changed into patterns. The patterns started to look planned, with rectangles, passageways, and empty spaces set up with mathematical accuracy. As the science got better and the scans got clearer, the proof started to feel less like a rumor and more like a revelation. Hawass could no longer hide what he saw by 2023. Then, In 2024, The Guardian finally gave in. Hawass, who was now an old man and spoke more slowly but was still very proud, picked his words carefully in a quiet interview with an Egyptian culture magazine. He said, "We found something under the Sphinx. The poles are real. Egypt isn't ready for what's coming next." Though it was a small thing, it shook the world like thunder. Within hours, the news spread all over the world. Some people thought it was an attempt to get political points across. Some people thought it was an honest moment from a man who had kept too many lies for too long. Years of fights were hidden behind those few words. It was never easy to tell the truth. If you dig under the Sphinx, the structure could fall apart, destroying Egypt's most famous image. Stability, not shock, was important for tourism, which was worth billions. Egypt was very proud of its culture and history. They couldn't stand the thought that someone had made their most important monument before the pharaohs. Plus, politics and religion made things even less stable. If you questioned the official schedule, you would get angry, shocked, and in the news all the time, which Egypt couldn't stop. All of this was clear to Hawass. He had been the guardian for decades, weighing the truth against the safety of the country. A strong wall can be broken down over time, though, he once thought. Every morning I faced east toward the light, but I had spent my whole life blocking it. Those words showed a man who had been hiding the past for 50 years, until the weight of quiet became heavier than any stone. The leak then happened. Late in 2024, a set of AI-assisted tomography scans was made public. The scans showed clear, rectangular rooms under the Sphinx's northern paw. There was no denying them. Straight lines, empty hallways, and shapes that nature could never make. Within days, the internet went crazy. Around the world, hashtags like #SphinxChamber and #HiddenTruth were popular. The news channels wanted replies. A lot of documentary teams rushed to Cairo. Everyone around the world was curious about what Egypt had been hiding. And once, Zahi Hawass agreed with them. At age 78, he asked the government in public to let a small, carefully controlled dig happen. He said that technology could make it safe, and that Egypt owed the world honesty. But the bureaucracy was a slow process. That was no longer the question. Was there something under the Sphinx? Because the next step, the choice to find out what was hiding in the dark, would decide everything. What will happen next could change history for good. The Chamber of Truth.
And take this limestone to build the pyramids. We could see evidence.
It was time for everyone to move on by early 2025. A group of universities from Egypt and other countries put forward a risky plan for a dig that would not damage the Sphinx's delicate stone in any way. The plan called for a lateral shaft to be drilled from a few meters away and run horizontally until it hit the hole that had been mapped out under the northern paw. Engineers said there would be no risk or damage. It was only necessary for someone to sign. But it takes a long time to sign in Egypt. The idea sat in the ministry's buildings for a long time, like an old artifact, mixed between pride and fear. If it were approved, the country's greatest story would be rewritten. If it were turned down, the secret would stay hidden. Politicians talked about whether telling the truth was worth the risk, and the Sphinx waited, as silent as ever. But science moved quickly forward. With the help of AI-driven tomography, muon particle imaging, and fiber optic robots, it was now possible to look inside the chamber without breaking any seals. These tools could look at density, find artifacts, and even make 3D models of what was hidden. Younger archaeologists in Egypt, who were less scared and more interested, called it the start of the post-Hawass era, a time of cautious openness where truth might finally win out over custom. There was a lot of talk. Some people thought that the hole was useful and that ancient workers had carved it out as a maintenance cave or drainage vault. Other people saw a formal underworld with a tomb connected to the Osiris cult. The bravest said it was something much older, like a piece of a society that had been erased from history. There were huge stakes in each idea, for science, for faith, and even for Egypt's very identity. And that's the mystery, for now. What do you think lies beneath the Sphinx? Tell us below. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And click the next video popping up on your screen for more secrets revealed.